Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Tuesday tea time, and I realized that I switched phone carriers, so that means that I now have cell coverage out in the pasture. So I'm with Ocasio today, and Myrna, and Cleo. So we're out in what I call the wild bunch. These are my horses that are out all winter long, and it's a beautiful day today. You can see out across the valley. It's really beautiful and sunny. I used to not have any cell coverage here, so I couldn't do tea time except up at my house. So this is kind of fun. I'll be able to involve them sometimes. So today, my story is about Ocasio here. He's a really interesting challenge for me. And the thing that I want to talk about today is going slow to go faster. Freedom-based training is something that I would be studying even if no one else was interested in it. It's fascinating to me. As you can see, Ocasio is very busy. He has a lot of things to do. And he's playful, he's fun, but he also is easily overwhelmed. And when he gets overwhelmed, you tend to see behaviors of fight and flight. And he tends to skip right over the freeze part. So he's more reactive than most horses. But he loves people and he's lots of fun. Thank you, Lucy. Yeah, it is really fun to share my other herd with everybody. So, given that Ocasio is really busy, I often feel like I should be doing more. And as you see, I'm going to keep moving here because you have to do more, otherwise he will provoke you into doing more. And it's better to do more before you're provoked. If he really needs me to keep moving, it's better that I keep moving before I feel uncomfortable. So in the way that I teach, this is called supportive leadership. I'm moving more than the horses to try and help this guy feel better. Okay, I'm not trying to change him. I'm not trying to alter him. If he's busy, and that's okay. But I am trying to work with him. Okay, and this is one of the premises of freedom-based training, is that I am not trying to change the horse. I will change the horse over time. Yay, Shelly's here live. Good to see you, Shelly. So as I was saying, I will change the horse over time because that is the nature of being alive. We are shaped by our experiences. And so the experiences that I share with my horses will shape them and train them over time. Now, you can see that he got playful again, and as he gets playful, I have a choice. I can respond to that and see that playfulness is a need for interaction, or I can wait until he threatens me into interacting. If I wait until he threatens me, I've gotten to a place where he felt really bad in response to my harmony. And that's a difficult concept. It's taken me a long time to figure it out too. Yay, Annie's here, Alan's here. It's a good group today. So what I'm talking about today is this idea of go slow to go fast. Go slower to go fast. And this is complicated with a horse like Ocasio here, who is busy. He's so busy that when I try and slow down, I actually make him uncomfortable. And, so there I wasn't active enough and he just left me, and that's pretty normal. Okay. I was not really ahead of it that time. So here it is. I'm just going to keep walking until we have a little moment where we can have some harmony. And you can see he starts moving again. He's very busy, this horse. So how do I do less? how do I slow down if I have a horse that won't let me slow down? And this has been a really interesting problem that I've had to work with. And the answer is I just have to get really creative with my supportive leadership. So as I pick a place to be, if I want to be in harmony here, is he going to let me be in harmony here? Or is he going to play with me enough? He goes, no, I can't do harmony. I need something more. And then I got to give it to him. Because the point of freedom-based training is not to change the horse. The point of freedom-based training is to respond to the horse until they are naturally changed over time. And this came up because I've been getting a lot of questions. Actually, this is pretty common from my students that have done this work for a while. Yes, it's great, but now I need to put them in the trailer. Now I need to put their halter on. Now I need to do X, Y, or Z. And when we want to do a certain thing with them, all of a sudden, we want the training to go faster. Here's the thing. When you want the training to go faster, it starts being more about training and less about freedom. And then it really depends on your skill. It depends on your skill with applying pressure and taking pressure off. And I don't care if that pressure is with food rewards, where you give food rewards, or you take them away, or you withhold them. That is a form of pressure. I don't care if that pressure is by surprising the horse with a flag or not surprising them with the flag, or if the pressure is, holding the lead rope a little bit differently versus releasing the lead rope. Once you start leaning into training, you start putting more pressure on and taking it off at specific times to get a specific result. And here's where I run into problems, because students will say, I'm having X situation and I really need something to happen, but I want to use freedom-based training principles. And I get excited because I think, yeah, we could do that. It's a little more training, a little less freedom, but we could do that. And I start throwing out ideas. Well, you could do this and you could do that and you could do the other thing. But none of my ideas are correct unless the horse says they're correct. And the only way we know they're correct is you get more good behaviors and less bad behaviors. You get more harmony, you get more yielding, and you get more play, which is interacting in a way that you like. If you take any of my suggestions and you do them at the wrong time or in the wrong way, you're going to get more fight, more flight, and more lack of harmony, more freeze, more ignoring you. And this is really hard for people, and it's really tempting to say, well, your suggestions didn't work, Elsa. That's the thing. Freedom-based training is more about freedom and less about training if you want to build the foundation correctly. As soon as you get into, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z so I get the end result of this, we're doing more training and less freedom. And when we do more training and less freedom, you have to have more skills. You have to be able to read your horse. You have to know when to put the pressure on, when to take the pressure off, so that they are shaped in the way that you want. Now, if you get the timing wrong, okay, if you put the pressure on or you take the pressure off at the wrong time, you will end up training the horse to do the wrong thing. And I can't hold everybody's hand through that. Through email, through video, through phone conversations. You have to learn that from the horse. Now, here's my story about Ocasio. He's finally starting to settle here. We had a really rainy week a couple of weeks. I guess it was last week. Last week we had a really rainy week. It rained all week. And I couldn't touch this horse, okay? And that's, honestly, it's embarrassing to me. You can see he likes people. He's really friendly. I've had him for a number of years. Like, I should be able to touch my horse, right? But I think that Ocasio would be on the neurodivergent spectrum. I might he might fit in what we would consider an autistic spectrum. He's very, very sensitive. And so that means that in cases where many horses would appreciate some pressure, and they actually do well with a little bit more training and a little less freedom, Ocasio is the kind of horse that might just destroy himself when he gets overwhelmed. Throw himself on the ground, run through fences, that sort of thing. So that makes it a little bit difficult to lean into training, which means we have to lean into a little bit more freedom. So I took the week to be really humble, which meant I didn't touch him for a week. I came out, kept my hands in my pockets, and I spent time around him, moving more when he needed me to move more, being in harmony when he could handle it. And, you know, here it is where he's being playful and cute and sweet. It's important that I move more before I am irritated by that. Not trying to change his behavior, not trying to shape it. It will naturally become shaped over time. That's part of being alive. But it's my responses to it that shape it over time. After that week, I thought, have we taken a huge step backwards? Is it going to be forever? Am I not going to be able to trim his feet anymore? I had a lot of fears. Sun came out again. I had the best session I have ever had with this horse in the history of our time together. After a week of not being able to touch him. That's my story. Sometimes you need to go slow to go faster. If you can take the horse you have that day and say, what is possible for him today? I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to not work with him. I'm not going to say, oh, it's hopeless. I'm going to show up and say, what is possible between us today? And then I'm going to invest that in the bank account. And if I have to do that for 7 days in a row, I'm going to take some emotional hits, some ego hits where I feel like, oh my God, am I a terrible trainer? I should be able to teach this horse more things. I should be able to touch him even if it's raining. Now, granted, I could have gotten some carrots and caught him if I needed to. It's not like I couldn't catch him, but he wasn't going to volunteer to be touched. If I can take that at face value and say, okay, that's really interesting that you feel that way. It's really interesting, Ocasio, that you're that overwhelmed in the pouring rain and the bad weather by being touched. Can I interact with you on your terms without trying to change you? Okay? Acknowledge that sometimes you're playful and you need a little bit more action, and I can give you that action until you settle. And then when you settle, we can have a moment of harmony. And our relationship is about the balance between more action and more harmony and getting that timing right. As I get nudged again. You can see this horse has a very low tolerance for harmony. He says, please do something. Don't just stand there. This is going to make it really difficult to train him without any dominance. Okay? Because if he has a low tolerance for harmony, harmony is my reward system if I am not going to use a pressure system. So I have a lot of work to go with this horse. But it was really exciting to realize that after a week of showing up on his terms, even though it was back to years ago, like we hadn't regressed that far in years. And I took a week and I said, you know what, that's where we are this week. This week I'm going to show up and I'm going to be with him on his terms, freedom-based, not thinking about the training side of it, okay? Just responding to him in a sense of freedom. Who are you today? I don't need you to change. I just want to spend time with you on your terms and really hone my feel and my timing around what you need. So, you know, this is one of my life lessons. He's an incredibly good teacher, incredibly playful. I'm going to learn a lot from him. Eventually, I do believe we'll get to the place where harmony is more of a reward system for him, but it isn't yet. And so I've got to work with that, knowing that to train him without a pressure system, which he's pretty overreactive to, is going to be, it's going to be a real journey. So I see that I've got some comments here. I'm going to scroll back and see. Lucy says, is it okay to do training and FBT with a horse? What percentage of the time do you recommend? Is it different for each horse? Yes, absolutely, Lucy. Totally different for each horse. If it's getting better, you're getting it right. If it's getting worse, you got to get the timing differently. Totally fine to have part of your day where you focus on training and part of your day where you focus on freedom. And I do with a lot of my horses. You just have to realize as you lean into the pressure side of shaping a horse's behavior, you have to build some skill of when you put the pressure on and when you take the pressure off. And if you do it in a way that's overwhelming for the horse, you're going to find that you get more and more fight and flight that you then have to manage. And being able to manage the fight and flight is, that's something that I don't really focus on, because it's too hard to hold somebody's hand through that at a distance, okay? I focus on understanding the freedom part of it and then understanding the theory of how that shapes into training if we're willing to go slow to go fast. Slow work until the horse starts volunteering to be in harmony more and more often, which means we can use that as a reward system, which means then we can start to shape their behavior more. So Annie says, yes, take the pressure off and still stick to the horse. Like, don't judge him or yourself. Exactly, Annie. Just show up. Invest in that bank account. Every single time I have done this, my work has been 100 times better a week later. And yet I still forget to do it. I still think that, the best way is the direct line to a goal. I want my horse to want to put his halter on. So I want to work on putting the halter on. But that's a little too direct line. That's going fast to go fast. If we want to go slow to go fast, we think, well, how do we spend time around the horse in a way that makes them interested in objects like a halter? How do we spend time around the horse that triggers their brain to be curious, engaged, and interactive in a way where harmony is valuable to them? Naomi says, go with the horse first, follow the feel before you present your feel. Yes, that's a beautiful way of putting it. Some horses are going to really challenge you to understand them differently than all the other horses you've known before. And what their feel is in a case like Ocasio is really different from any horse I've ever worked with before. So he's going to teach me a lot, but that means that sometimes I'm going to have to slow down way more than I think I have to in order to have next week or next month or next year be faster than I anticipated. So, yeah. So those are my thoughts today. So you can see even just this few minutes of moving around Ocasio, we've now reached a more settled state where harmony is fine, but you can see he's a little bit frozen. This is an improvement over so busy that he was intolerant of me holding a position. It's not the end goal. The end goal is I want him to be fully engaged without being intolerant of my choices. But that's, that takes time. He's watching the other horses take a little walk down the fence line. So, Nami says, I love the volunteering of the behaviors, them putting money in your bank account. Yep, it is. It is like they put money in my bank account. Harmony is a reward system for them, but only if we get it right, if we do harmony at the right times and the right places. Like, we have to learn the horse before harmony becomes a reward system. And that's what makes it such a fun puzzle. That's why I would do it even if nobody wanted to learn this from me. This is my art form. This is my study. And this is what I want to spend my time playing with. And he says, do you reward Ocasio's freeze then more than the many focus changes? Yes, exactly, Annie. So for him, we have to establish a state of stability first. and then we can add focus changes to them. But what I find with a horse like Ocasio is if I try and emphasize the focus changes and the thinking first, he just rebounds into being overwhelmed, and then he can't tolerate harmony anymore, which means I've lost my reward system. So for him, freeze in a relaxed kind of state is actually an improvement over that busyness that is an intolerance for anyone else's decisions. So, yeah, they are all different. Absolutely, Nemi. And Sal says, this is perfect for me today. Thank you. You're welcome, Sal. I was thinking about you and Cleo today. You know, it's really easy for me to be super positive about this after I've had a breakthrough like I had this week, where, you know, it was really hard last week with Ocasio. I was really frustrated, and I showed up and I sort of trusted the work and I believed in the process. And then this week we had a breakthrough where everything got easier, and we're having more and more moments of harmony, and we are, you know, in a place where he doesn't mind touch as much. He is more interested in my choices. He's less reactive. We got his hooves trimmed really nicely the other day. He was pretty well behaved for the farrier. Thank you, Emma. So I've kind of had a breakthrough with him, which makes it really easy for me to be positive. But I guess I'm putting it out there for all of you who might be in a little bit of the dark tunnel place, where you think, I'd really like my horse to do X, Y, or Z, where you need to lean into the training side of things. And then you have to decide, you know, do I get the help of a really good trainer in my area who can hold my hand through this? Or do I learn it with the horse as best I can? Or do I take a step back and say, you know what? It's time for me to invest a lot more in my bank from the freedom side and say, who are you today? What's the bank account? If I'm not trying to change you, can I invest enough in our relationship that next week, next month, next year, when I step into the pressure side of training and shaping the behavior a little bit more, it's easy instead of it being difficult. So Micah says, how do you start tolerance freeze with him? You know what? I just keep moving around, and eventually there will be moments where he is more settled and he's a little bit more frozen. And in those moments, I'm going to be in harmony, but I try and get moving before he is intolerant of my choice to be in harmony. The more times I can leave before he wants me to leave, the more he will wish I had stayed. The more times I get it wrong and I stay too long and he's got to nudge me, push me into action, tell me he needs more, the less settled he's going to be. And so it's all about timing. Can I read what's likely to happen next and be ahead of it? Which I'm definitely not as I'm talking to all of you guys. I'm a little behind here. But that's my goal as I work with him when I'm paying more attention, is that I can get ahead of it and I can anticipate what he's going to need before he has to tell me. And as I do that, he's going to settle more and more. After we've built a pattern of being more settled, then we can go to being in a pattern where I'm asking him to think more, engage more, and be more curious and more interactive without being intolerant of my decisions. So, you know, he's a funny horse. He's often on alert. He's often wide-eyed. He's often startled. And he's just going to have to learn that life is not that overwhelming. Certainly not all the time. But on the way to that, I have to accept that I might not ever change him. If I really want to lean into the freedom part of this, he gets to be exactly who he is, which includes being overreactive sometimes. My job is just to get ahead of it, know what's going to happen, be in the right place at the right time, and that shows him that I am aware, which helps him settle, which means harmony can then become this sort of training value between us. So Shelley says, such a fine line on who's training who. Is it more of a conversation? Yes, absolutely. So who's training to who really depends on who can predict the future better. Okay, so if you have a horse that is very, very good at anticipating and knowing what happens next, they will end up training you. If you can start to read them better and you know what's happening next, you can then get ahead of enough so that you're in the right place at the right time to start nurturing the behaviors you like better. So yeah, who's training to really depends on the timing. And he says, so often I came back to the very beginning, as it is frustrating every time I learned more. Yeah. And I think, Annie, this comes up for a lot of my students, is the fact that, as we study this, the freedom part is sort of easy at the beginning. And then we go, okay, now I should be able to shape the behavior. But then you get to a point where you go, well, how much pressure do I want to use to shape the behavior? And if you don't want to use a lot of pressure to shape the behavior, you have to keep coming back to the freedom part over and over again to rebuild that bank account so you don't have to use a lot of pressure. That's the go slow to go fast part. But inevitably it comes down to these conversations I have with my students where they go, yeah, but how would I put the right pressure on to get the right training effect to get the horse to do what I want? And the more we start talking about the right pressure, the more I'm going to have to direct you to a really talented trainer who can be with you in person, because it's such a unique timing from one horse to the other. If we can really lean into the freedom side of it to build enough bank account that the training is easy, well, that's great. I can help you from here on that. But all of my students, myself included, I'm one of my students, all of my students at some point say, okay, that's great. I've done enough freedom part. Now I want to change my horse. Well, there's some ideas. We can certainly play with the ideas, but if your horse responds badly, you didn't have enough money in the bank account to put that kind of pressure on. And so therefore, you need the right tools to do it, whether it's food rewards or a flag or a round pen, whatever it is. If your horse responds badly, you need the right pressure tools to get them through that. And that's not something I can help with from a distance. So Naomi says, such important opportunities that come up with better and perfect timing. Yep. Yeah, Florentine. Ocasio is a really good teacher for a lot of us. I'm learning a lot from him. So Lucy says, so interesting. I have a horse who doesn't like me touching him. Owned him for 10 years. I definitely have very little in the bank. As for many years, he's irritated me. I just got softer with him this year, and he will tolerate a stroke now, but not a scratch. Yep. So those horses that don't like being touched, they might have been born that way. But then on top of that, on top of their natural sensitivity, you're going to find that people have always done too much too soon. And every time you do too much too soon, you reinforce for the horse that they don't like being touched. Being able to slow it down enough so that you touch them or almost touch them enough that they're curious about it and they want more, but then you don't give them more. That's how you build a desire to be touched, is you have to trigger enough of the desire that then you can leave, that then you leave them wanting more. And that is so hard for us humans to not do too much. Again, there's your go slow to go fast idea. So Alan says, love the way you think so clearly about pressure-based training and its value and its weakness. Yeah. I really think most horses prefer pressure-based training. I think we have some great methods out there, whether it's your tool-based approach with a round pen and a flag, or your food-based reward system. I think we have some great pressure-based systems. But the pressure systems need to be done with the right feel and timing for each horse. And that takes skill. If you do it wrong, you will make it worse. And the beautiful thing about freedom-based training is we just start with this idea of go so slow that the horse does not need to change. Go so slow that you don't need them to alter their behavior in any way. Go so slow that all you're doing is taking time, learning them, being in their space, knowing what they're going to do next. And when you invest enough in the freedom side, the training side starts to get easy. But enough is not just a couple of hours. Enough is a lot of hours. Nick says, is he busy around his herd mates too? Do they have different strategies to deal with his behavior, and are some better at it? Yes. So Ocasio is endlessly irritating to almost all of his herd mates. I have him out with my 2 mares. This is Cleo here. And Cleo's strategy with Ocasio is to be willing to beat the crap out of him when he even thinks sideways. So he actually does really well living with Cleo because she's so heavily dominant and so fair and never lets him get out of line very far. And so he's actually much quieter when he lives with Cleo than any other horse, which is why I keep him out here. So that's, that's a really good way to, if you can find them the right herd mate, it helps. When I keep Ocasio with my stallions, it's really interesting. They tend to give him enough rope to hang himself with and then beat him up. And he gets much more flighty, much more concerned, because he'll get really busy, he'll get really irritating. They won't respond to him until he gets so irritating that then they have to really get mad at him. But because they've let him get so anxious first, he does tend to be a lot more flighty when he's living with the stallions. And I have a couple of less dominant mares that just let him chase them around. That's not so great either. So yeah, it's not just with people. He's a little bit, he's on a slow growth pattern here. But I mean, look at him. He's so beautiful. All right, let's see. I've got some other comments here. Sandra says, freedom-based training is simply the best way to build those skills of feel and timing. Yeah, that's what it's about. But feel and timing is really, really based on I don't need my horse to be any different than he is. As soon as we start saying, okay, I want to shape a behavior, then we have to have that feel and timing already established. We have to know the horse that well. And if we get a little off, we're going to make it worse instead of making it better. And that's really a hard place for us to realize. So, Charmaine, you're welcome. I'm glad that helps. Julia says, hi. I love freedom for my horse and so much for me, finally. Free to be free. Thank you. You're welcome. Trisha says, we would not like anyone to touch us if we didn't first consent. I think this is a difficult concept to allow our horses. This is what I love about FBT, is they can leave. Yeah, well, it's great. They can leave until that day we want to put them in the horse trailer. And then we have to make our peace with some kind of pressure-based system to teach them to get in the horse trailer, or a huge amount of hours that we've invested so much time in the freedom side of it that we've been able to shape them gently and slowly and progressively to the idea that they happen to love horse trailers too. And that's a really, really challenging thing for a lot of people. I'm going to keep doing it. I'll keep bringing tea time to you every week. And the thing that I want to remember for everybody here is that I don't think pressure-based systems are bad. I think they're very difficult with a horse like Ocasio because he has a tendency to break himself rather than yield to pressure. And so the amount of skill needed to apply and take pressure off is remarkable. Some horses are highly sensitive that way. And if you have one, you get sort of forced into investing in your bank account more than most horses just to sort of survive and not have anybody get hurt. For most horses, a little bit of dominance, pressure at the right time in the right way to cause them to change their behavior, to make them get along better with everybody, it's not a bad thing. But I love the investment in the freedom side of it. So those are my thoughts today. I'm going to go actually do some work where I'm paying attention to the horses and I can get ahead of their actions and have them want more time with me instead of less. I hope that that's good food for thought, all of you guys. And Annie, I love that you're sharing tea with your horses. That's awesome. All right, you guys, have a wonderful day. Leave any comments, questions in the comment box and I'll check it later today. Let me know if there's something particular you want to hear about. I'll try and find some stories to go with it. Thanks for sharing my really good week with Ocasio and my breakthrough. And I'll keep you posted.